In the last 4 weeks, we looked at the 4 first chapters of the Science of Mind textbook, and so we talked about a lot about law and how law operates in our life. And I would venture a guess, at least I know it's true for me, that love was always synonymous with God. Regardless of the religion that we were raised in, we had a knowing and understanding of love within God. For me, coming to Centers for Spiritual Living opened up a whole new field of beauty and magnificence in the understanding of law and how it works and how I work it, whether I'm aware of it or not. And so becoming aware of it was really valuable. So today our title is I Am Enough, and trusting that loving aspect is already at work in your life, we're going to ask all of us to open up to a greater experience of absolute knowing that I am enough. Now, hopefully each of you have already had some ideas pop into your mind about what that enoughness, which category, which area that enoughness will be appreciated for within you. Let's take a look at what the word enough actually means. In the dictionary, it's defined as much or as many as required or necessary. Now, I don't know about you, but I want my enough to be more than what is just necessary. I want my health, my finances, my relationships to be more than what is just necessary. So I looked up some synonyms that would go along with this, and so maybe one speaks to you. I know that a couple did to me. One word is sufficient, one is adequate, one is ample, abundant, and full measure. And I absolutely love the full measure because we talk about that full measure pressed down and overflowing in our tithing and giving statement. And it actually comes from the Bible, a verse in the Bible. So I do like the full measure, but I especially love thinking of enough as abundant. And so when we look at this, we're looking at the abundance for everything and anything that you could want or need. Having an adequate and plentiful supply for anything and everything that you could need. That you're sufficient for the purpose in order to satisfy your desire. When we do not believe we are enough, whatever category it is, whether we're too fat, too thin, too tall, too thin, too tall, too short, too engaged in food, too not engaged in food, too unhealthy to do that, too under-exercised to do this. When we believe that we are not enough in any area of our life, we are basically telling ourselves that we are inadequate, that there is a deficiency within us. And our body, of course, responds by going, yes, okay. And life around us demonstrates that for us. So I say these words, not all of them together, but I say these words quite often, and I'm going to say them again so that they really speak deeply to each one of us. There is nothing missing within you. There is nothing lost. There is nothing broken. There is nothing about you that needs to be fixed. You are already whole, complete, and perfect at the very core of your being, because that's how you were made. And so you are adequate. You can claim, I am enough.
I think an important tool to realizing that is self-compassion. You know, we were brought up to believe that it's virtuous to give and to show kindness and be compassionate to others and have patience and be loving to others. But how often have we heard those things to ourselves? Say, it's very important that you give yourself compassion, that you give yourself kindness and patience and love. And how often do you look in the mirror and say, I'm a great person? Because, oh my gosh, that's conceited and boastful, isn't it? Or is it? Am I really just a good person? Hopefully you feel that way. It's important to recognize your personal value, because you are valuable. You are one of a kind. You are God expressing as you into the world. And if you don't see your value, how are you going to put that value, that facet of the allness that is, into the world, clearly, precisely? Plotinus, this philosopher around 200 years BC, and he knew this, and it took us all this time to still not quite figure it out. He says, roused into myself from my body, outside everything else and inside myself, my gaze has met beauty, wondrous, and great. Now, back in those days, they said things kind of backwards a little bit, so it's a little challenging to understand it, so I'm going to tear it apart. Here he says, roused into myself from my body. First of all, that's a recognition that my inner self is not part of my body. My inner self is part of my spiritual essence. It's something deeper and grander and more expansive than this physical form that I'm taking up. He says, outside everything else and inside myself. I'm separate spiritually from the physical. He's separating the idea of his physicality into his spirituality, and recognizing this, just that spiritual nature, which is very abundant. And he says, my gaze has met beauty, wondrous, and great. I am wondrously beautiful and great on the inside. How I show up on the outside, that's for everybody else to decide. But how I feel and how I show up in the world, wondrously and greatly, is something I see myself as when I look inside. So our inner self is not a physical aspect, it's a spiritual aspect. Hafiz says, all the talents of God are within you. How could this be otherwise when your soul derived from his genes? God is all that we are. So how can we be anything less than adequate or enough? I can not remind myself enough, too frequently, that I am more than this physical experience, this physical existence that I am. In fact, this physical experience is nothing more than a byproduct of spiritual consciousness. I have had thoughts, and had those thoughts come into manifestation, and my whole physical experience is a result of thoughts that I have had in my mind that I have let manifest around me. So I think it's important for us to remember the truth of who we are, our true nature.
Absolutely. And nobody else gets to decide for you what you look like. They can have their opinion, but remember my friend said to me once, oh, you can have your opinion, everybody can have their opinion about my life. Everybody should have one, but they don't get to have one in mine, in my life. Everybody should have an opinion, and that's fine and well and good, but not for me. It doesn't transfer over.
I also like the idea that whatever other people think of me is none of my business.
Right. So I'm going to invite you to say those words with me, I am enough, and think of whatever ways in which you maybe want to experience more enoughness. Let's say those together. Go. I am enough. Let's say it again. I am enough. Those words, those three little words, that phrase carries a whole lot of weight and meaning when we're telling ourselves that. And many people struggle to believe it about themselves. David used the word self-compassion, and I love that word for this topic. And I also like self-acceptance and self-worth. You said her mom had some sayings about money, and mine had similar ones. Mine also had some whenever I wanted anything, like something that maybe she believed they couldn't afford, and I would want it. Well, I was a selfish, greedy, stingy little girl who needed to learn that to give is better than to receive. And that affected me when I was young too, but not anymore. You can't have one without the other. They are complementary. If you are only giving, you are depleting yourself. You must give to yourself. You must believe with all your heart and all your soul that you are enough just as you are to accomplish anything you desire. It's about realizing that you are worthy. You are worthy of whatever ideas have been coming to mind when we say enough. You are absolutely worthy of love, of respect, and of all the good things that life has to offer, just as you are.
I believe this influences self-confidence, because how can you possibly have confidence if you don't feel like you're enough? How can you possibly feel that you have an ability to move through the things that need to be done in your life if you don't have enough, or if you are not enough? So we need to learn how to accept gifts and accept compliments and recognize that is the truth of who we are. And so you can get to the point where you say, yeah, I knew that. I knew that was true. And that may seem a little bold, but Deborah quite often reminds me of things when I start getting my little pity parties. She says, she will give me a little affirmation. I go, thank you for reminding me. Yes, I did know that. Thank you. I think humility is a virtue, but I also think excessive humility can be detrimental to self-value, to seeing ourselves as our true nature. And I believe that sense contributes to our feeling less than enough. We need to turn it all around.
And so there's a story about a woman, it's a true story, about a woman who has a great life now. I'm going to tell you the ending first. She has a great life now, a wonderful family. She has a great career as a nurse and children. But she tells the story about her growing up. And when she and her twin sister were 2 years old, they had a house fire. And they had to get themselves out of the fire. And she tells how that one single event transformed her life for all of her life until she revealed the healing within it. So she tells about how she felt throughout her life that she just was not ever enough, not enough for anything, not enough to have friends, not enough to be a good sister or a good person, not enough to speak up. She just always felt like she had to sit back and because she wasn't good enough throughout her life. Well, as an adult, she found mindfulness and she began meditating and started saying affirmations, and one of those affirmations was, I am enough. And she tells about how at that point in her life, she really did start getting her life on track and creating a good life for herself. But there was still something within her that felt like I'm not enough. She said she continued to say her affirmations, to work with mindfulness and meditation, and eventually, as the law does always say yes, she found the underlying cause within her. And she realized that since that event of the fire, she had felt immense guilt because her sister had been much worse, burned much worse than she was. And her sister still has scars all over, so every time she would look at her sister, she would be reminded of the guilt that she felt, that she had suppressed. So that every time you say, I am enough, that inner critic within you is calling you out on it. And that inner critic is saying, really? You really think you're enough? Oh no, I'm enough to have that or do that or be that. That inner critic will keep calling you back. Now the inner critic has positives too. But the negative is that it's going to tell you when you're trying to say, I am enough, it's going to say, if you really believe that, why don't you just look over here at this thing you did? It's going to call that out for you. So we have to reveal the healing within the inner critic, within the balance within ourselves. And I'm going to talk a little more about that later, but when I was thinking about this topic and how maybe we can relate with stories from our past, I remember David's favorite quote from last week, and you can watch it on YouTube if you weren't here last week. So I'm not going to repeat it. It's Ernest Holmes' words. But what I'm going to do is take this enough idea and put it into that same favorite quote. So this is a takeoff from a Science of Mind quote. When you believe you are enough, you are enough. Because the law works according to what you believe. When you believe you are not enough, you are not enough. Not because the law did not work, but because it worked according to your thought that you are not enough. And that is so, in a nutshell, what our thought does. So it gives us great pause in thinking, are we going to claim we're not enough, or are we going to claim we are enough? I have enough, I have plentiful supply because God is my supply, and it already is fully present, and I just have to reveal it.
So you can see that this is all about actually recognizing your truth, the truth of who and what you are. Remember, God is all that is. And if God is all that is and you are, therefore God is all you are. And to say that you are not enough is to say, essentially, mathematically, God is not enough. Oops, you believe that? Well, if you say God is enough and God is all that is, and God is all that I am, how can I possibly be not enough? It just doesn't make sense. Mathematically, if nothing else. James Mellon is a fellow minister of ours. He says, the power within you is the same. No, he doesn't say that. I'll tell about that in a little bit. He says, you are the mind of God and you will function at the level of your willing to know it. You are the mind of God and will function at your level of willing to know it. You are the power of the universe. You are God in expression. You are God showing up in this physical realm to the extent that you are willing to know that. And the extent to you believe that will be determined to the extent to which you actually show up as that. Ernest Holmes is the one who said, the power within you is the same that holds the planets in space. The power within you is the same power that holds the planets in space. It's the same power that creates volcanoes and hurricanes. The same power is within you. It's the same power that you have at your disposal at any now moment. That is the truth of who and what you are. God in expression, yes, in human form, but God in expression as you. That's enough.
It absolutely is. So let's look at what happens within us when that inner critic gets active and we're forgetting the truth of what we know. The more that we fight the negative feelings that come up for us, the bigger and stronger they get. And the reason for that is because we're the thinker. We're thinking them over and over. We're playing those tapes in our head. And what happens is we don't really like these stories that play in our heads, so suddenly we notice that we're feeling irritable, or we're feeling bad, we're feeling wronged. We maybe lash out at the ones we love the most, and we didn't even really have a reason, or maybe we thought we did in the moment. We blame others, and we find excuses to not do what we came here to do, to be that enoughness. And so the thing is that the idea of not being enough came into your mind a long time ago. It's part of your story. It's part of your personal story. And it's well rooted within your life. And you can't go back and change your story. However, you absolutely can tell a new story to yourself today. The thought that we think most frequently, most precisely, our most dominant thoughts play out for us and create the life that we're living. We have to be specific and precise with our enoughs. So start stringing some new thoughts together. Maybe you're already allowing those wheels to turn within you. What are the thoughts that you're going to take up? Because those thoughts, not only in the law operate, but also within our own brain. We form pathways and dendrites and synapses where it sparks together and goes, ooh, I like that one. She thinks that, or he thinks that all the time. Make it a good thought. So our stories won't ever go away, but they will diminish with time and with practice. So that instead of the I'm not good enough stories, we can begin right where we are to tell the I am stories. Tell the universe what I am, and it will show up that way for you.
Yeah, we've all kind of been infected by those old tapes and those old voices in our lives that have told us we're not enough yet. And our growth of enoughness has been stunted every time we've heard somebody say, who do you think you are? Each time somebody said that to you, it's kind of put you in your place, put you in a box, put parameters around you, saying you are not any more than this. Don't listen to the naysayers. You need to support yourself with people who are on the same journey. And yeah, look around you, because we're all in this journey supporting and loving each other together. Look around yourself, because these are the people you need to surround yourself with. We're going on the same path, we're studying the same things, are looking for self-empowerment, and looking for other people to support them. So look for people who are supportive and validate your value, who recognize the God in you. There's a great word in New Thought Circle, it's called namaste. And namaste is the God in me recognizes the God in you. It's important that we associate ourselves with the namasteyers, not the naysayers.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you to ponder. Am I taking care of myself? And now add one little word to that. How am I taking care of myself? And maybe in meditation this week, just sit with that. Obviously, the way that we take care of ourselves sends the universe a message as to how we believe we should be taken care of.
Recognize your personal value. You are valuable. In fact, you are not just enough, you are more than enough. You are an infinite being. You're a spiritual being, having this physical experience. But you are more than enough. You're beautiful, magnificent, powerful, strong, capable, intelligent, wise. You are one with the infinite source source of good in the universe. You are not a piece of it, you are one with it. It is showing up as you. You are more than enough. As we were looking at this topic this week, and I looked up some things on the internet for information, I kept seeing this phrase over and over again. It says, don't worry if you feel like you are not enough. Nobody is perfect. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm not enough, but it's because I'm not perfect. Well, that's not what I wanted to talk about today. And I realized, okay, once again, God is all that is. And we always say, God is the only thing that's perfect. Okay, if God is all that is, and God is all that I am, I must be perfect. But I only recognize it to the level that I believe it and understand that and live up to that idea. Ernest Holmes says, until we wake to the fact that we are one in nature with God, we shall not find the way of life, the one life, the true life. Understand that your nature is God's nature, and then you will actually be able to achieve the fullness of life.
Absolutely. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and a couple of times just say to yourself, I am enough. And as you allow that enoughness to infiltrate every part of you, I'm going to share this short poem, author unknown. It's amazing how the combination of these three words strung together, spoken aloud, and felt in our core, unchains the flame imprisoned within our hearts, reawakening the passion slumbering inside us, setting free the light held captive within our souls, igniting the fire burning deep inside. And so it is.